We hear these things which have us feel and believe that, like, again, like it's sending you a message or a signal that it's wrong. There's something wrong with wanting money. It's going to make you somehow a bad person, right? And if you believe that, well, then, the job of your subconscious mind is to protect you. So if there's a belief that it's, somehow, right, you having more money is going to make you a bad person, or suddenly you're going to be judged by others, right? Well, we don't want that.
What if there are things we never had the opportunity to learn? We've all been to school or training, but there are things they never taught us that actually make a powerful difference in life. I'm here to share with you all the pieces you've been missing: mindset, health, success, and more. And we'll all learn together from guests along the way. We may not have learned it the traditional way, but oh my goodness, let's keep learning how to do things differently. OMG, Teach Me Tribe. Hello. It is the second week in our, let's say, money budgeting, money smarts series. And so if you haven't listened to last week's episode with Katie, make sure that you go and do that. I will put the link in the show notes as well. She talked to us all about budgeting and how to make smart decisions with our money. And that led me to want to do this episode. So this week, we're going to talk about how we think about money, because this is one of those things that really can stop us in our tracks if we don't get this right. And there's a lot of stuff from life that we often have when we think about money. So my guest, Karen Mullins, is my first repeat guest on the podcast because she's amazing. And she is a mindset and transformation coach who helps her clients achieve quantum leap goals by getting to the root cause of results, which are the program beliefs and the self-image we have in our subconscious mind. She has been recognized as one of Bob Proctor's top 1% of coaches, and she lives in Manchester, England with her husband and 2 teenagers, and she has been my success coach for quite a while. So welcome, Karen.
Oh my goodness. Well, I am honored to be back, Cheryl. I mean, and to be the first repeat guest, seriously. So no pressure on me, but yeah, such a joy to be back here and having this conversation with you. Yeah.
I'm excited. Yes, because you are really the person that helped me start to dig into how I looked at money and how maybe I could change that. So you are the person I thought of for this conversation. And I think it's really going to be powerful for people.
Yeah. This is an area, this is an area in my own journey in this work, that I think came up for me quite early on in terms of like, oh, wow, like this is an area that I
Right.
need to focus on and just shine a bit of a light on. So I'm super happy to be here, and just to be having this conversation, I think is powerful.
Excellent. And that leads us right into my first question, because I always ask kind of, what's your story? How did you get where you are? And I am sure I already asked you that in the previous one. So we're going to get a little bit more specific. And I'm going to say, tell us a little bit about how you came to know or to realize that money mindset is such a powerful thing.
Yeah, gosh, it really is. And I think for me, it showed up really quite early in my own journey as a business owner, right? Like as a business owner and entrepreneur. So yeah, we possibly touched on this maybe in the first call we did together, but by way of background, I'd been 20 years in the corporate world. So very much the way that I received any income was from what felt like a very, kind of secure paycheck each month, right? And so then for me getting into being a business owner and starting my own business, which of course is my coaching practice, I had big dreams, right? That was the essence of what I was teaching and what I was studying. So I had big dreams of where I wanted to take that. And of course, the financial component came into that vision for myself of wanting to really, wow, wouldn't it be amazing if I could earn, significantly more than I was earning in my corporate role for myself in my own business? Something actually that Bob Proctor, as you mentioned, was a mentor of mine. Something he would always say is, how would you like to turn your annual income into your monthly income, right? Like that was an idea that he would often float by us, right? And the very first time, that I heard him say that, just the idea of it blew my mind, right? Like it wasn't really an idea I could easily accept. And so I think right there is the beginnings of the realization that, like, okay, well, maybe my thinking or how I feel about money, because actually it's a lot of the time it's the emotional side of it. Maybe this could do with some attention, right? Like maybe this, yeah, needs a bit of a tune up, because what I was experiencing and what I've since found out that so many of my clients go through too, right, is that we can have a desire for more money, right? I think there is unlikely to be anyone, I'm sure, listening to this show that deep down, right, or maybe not even so deep down, but I mean, and I'm sure we're going to get into this, would have a desire to be earning more, right? Like if they could, why not? And so what often shows up is that we have a desire for more, and yet on some level, so many of us can feel like there's something wrong with that desire, right? So we've straight out the gate, we've got a conflict with what we want versus how we feel about what we want, right?
Yes.
And this is so important. And this is where the money mindset piece comes in, because one of the core kind of principles, and I know you know this, Cheryl, right? But one of the core things that I say and remind people of is we don't so much get what we want, we get how we feel about what we want. And so here we are then with like, okay, so if we've got some real mixed emotions in relation to money, in relation to this thing that actually secretly, or maybe not so secretly, we'd love more of, then let's take a look at that, right? And that's really
Right.
where the money mindset piece starts to come in. Again, what's going on under the hood, right? You said a big focus of my work is on that subconscious part of our mind.
Yes.
And so it's the same for money as with anything else, right? Like, what are some of those beliefs then that we've got fixed within ourselves, typically in our subconscious mind, that are showing up for us and then limiting what we can go on to
Right.
achieve, right? Because, and I'll say this, as with everything else, money's no different, right? Like, what we go on to achieve and the results that we get in our external world are nothing more than a reflection of what is going on inside of us, right? And so that's why, yeah, we need to kind of pay attention and kind of dig into that a little bit.
And you know what? As you're saying this, I'm thinking to myself, I need to actually mention what your original episode was about, because what we were talking about, it was episode 6 of the podcast. And we even entitled it, I'm Doing All the Things. Why Don't They Work? And so it was exactly this. We were talking about how there might be some sort of resistance hidden in there, or some sort of feeling or thought that was preventing us from achieving what we wanted. So yes, everyone go back and listen to that one too, because it's all going to tie in. But let's take that a little bit farther, because you mentioned that we're going to have either thoughts or maybe feelings about money. Maybe they're hidden and we don't realize it. Maybe we realize it, we don't know what to do about it. But where do they come from? And why is money is often a big one for these subconscious kind of blocks. So why does that happen? Why does money often feel like a negative or a hard thing?
Yeah, well, because as with so much of what we believe, obviously about anything, right? It's forming what I call like a part of our programming or a part of our paradigm, okay, which is this kind of mental program that's fixed in your subconscious mind, okay? And what we want to understand about that is that we didn't really create it, right? Like so much of what you and I believe that is fixed kind of deep down in that emotional part of us, because our subconscious mind is the emotional mind. So hence why our feelings are so linked to what's going on in there. Okay. So much of what we believe at that deep subconscious level that forms part of like our programmed beliefs about anything have actually just been passed down to us from one generation to the next, right? And or they have been modeled to us in the environment that we grew up in, the society that we live in. And so if you think about it in relation to, like, again, money in particular, you only have to, like, an example I give actually a lot at the moment, especially for women, is that actually you don't even have to go back that far to see just how much our world has changed in terms of our relationship with money, right? And I was horrified to discover not that long ago, I might add, that it wasn't until 1975, okay, that women, I think this is the same in the US, it's definitely the case in the UK, but I think it was very similar timing, if not the same timing over in the US. It wasn't until 1975 that women could open up a bank account in their own name or take out a
Oh my
loan without
goodness.
having their husband or their father sign for them, right?
Oh my goodness.
Right? That was the year I was born, Cheryl. So it's really meaningful to me because it just highlights oh my gosh, knowing what I know about how our beliefs and our conditioning and how we feel about money actually are literally handed down, from one generation to the next to whoever, kind of has raised us. It's like, wow, is there any wonder? And I will say kind of women especially here, but of course the same applies male or female in terms of how your programming's formed. But is it any wonder then that so many, as I say, women in particular, don't maybe have the confidence, don't have such a healthy relationship with money, etc.? Because we've certainly, my generation, we've been raised by mothers and grandmothers who didn't even, just didn't have that same autonomy,
Wow.
with money or independence that we have. So we're getting mixed messages, sort of straight away around like, yes, so we have this desire for more money, but then we have so many conflicting beliefs, that sit with that. Well, if you want to go and earn more money, you're going to have to sacrifice. It's not that
Hmm.
easy. This is where these kind of things start to kick in as well.
Yeah, yeah. Or maybe that you're a bad person. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's another one. Right now, I'm literally actually in the first month of a 3-month prosperity program that literally is focusing completely on money mindset. And interestingly, this was something, so what you just said was something that's been coming up for quite a few people that are doing that work with me, where that's one of the things that they'd learned. That's one of the things that they had heard growing up, right? That kind of like, oh, I've seen what money does to people. And actually, that's never meant in a positive way, right? So do you
Good point.
see? Yeah. And it's kind of, so even if it's not being spelled out, but I mean, we've all heard things like, oh, money's the root of all evil, right? And it's not all about the money, like, and again, we hear these things which have us feel and believe that, like, again, like it's sending you a message or a signal that it's wrong. There's something wrong with wanting money. It's going to make you somehow a bad person, right? And if
Hmm.
you believe that, well, then, the job of your subconscious mind is to protect you. So if there's a belief that it's, somehow, right, you having more money is going to make you a bad person, or suddenly you're going to be judged by others, right? Well, we don't want that. So we might want money, but we don't want to be judged by others. We don't want other people to think that we're bad. And so it's just
Yeah.
fascinating, like seeing how these things come up and then getting people to really start to reevaluate that, right? Like that's one of the things that I've really been doing over these last few weeks, as I say, with in this particular program, but just really getting people to look at, well, hang on, is it money that's not good, or is it the individuals themselves, right? Like really, and in a great way, if I guess if I
Mm.
share this, it will help those listening to this episode. If you think about it, right, like you can find 5, 10 people, right, that like are good people that have got money, right? You could easily think of and find a number of people that have got money that are good people, right? But by the same token, you could just as easily find 5 or 10 people that don't have money that are amazing, good people too, right? So again, it's like, it's not the money. And we can do the opposite. The opposite is also true. You can look to
Yes.
people that have tons of money that aren't very nice people. But you can also find people that have no money that are also not very nice people, right?
Very
It's just,
true.
it's sort of joining the dots on it of like, it's not the money, it's the people. Like, let's not go giving kind of money power it doesn't have. But these are things that we need to kind of like unpick for ourselves and tell ourselves in order to then realize, gosh, so much of what I've been believing about money just isn't true, right?
Right. Yeah. It's interesting. A story is coming to mind, and I'm not going to say that somebody in the older generation of my family said this, and I'm not going to say who it was so that
Yeah.
I don't out them. But anyway, this person had moved into a home in a really nice neighborhood and was going to be able to stay a long time as this person was getting older. And at one point, I was there visiting, and he or she said to me, I live in the rich neighborhood now. And it was with embarrassment. It wasn't a
Oh.
brag. It was like,
Mm.
ooh,
Yeah.
ooh, I don't know if that's okay. First of all, it's just a really nice neighborhood. So
Yeah.
it's not like some, mansion or whatever. But second of all, why embarrassment? That was
Mm-hmm.
just so enlightening to me that that's the generation in my family that has influenced me,
Yeah.
and just that awareness was important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that comes back to, and this is something to really be aware of, and also to notice if you ever catch yourself, because again, we can do it subconsciously. We can do it just automatically. But if you ever catch yourself judging somebody that has money, right? Because you see in that example where we might feel a little bit kind of, oh, don't. Oh, it's also a little bit of like, don't brag, don't be too loud, don't show off, isn't it? It's things like this. But
Yes.
always that's coming really from a place of, just, yeah, don't stand out too much, because actually
Mm.
that's vulnerable to do that. It's not safe. Like, really, that's kind of the underlying message of like, oh, it's not safe to be seen to be having this money, because what will people think? Like, that's almost the unspoken part. It's like,
Yes.
what will other people think? It's the judgment. And we want to be careful then. And this is something else that I was just teaching on recently, of if you find yourself judging somebody else, like if you just look, you may not do it out loud, but just in your own head, you might judge someone that's got money. Notice that, because your subconscious mind is always listening. So if it notices you doing that, it's kind of like, oh, okay, noted, right? Like, best not like allow her to have too much then, because otherwise, like, now she's going to get judged like this, right? And it doesn't
Wow.
want you to be judged. You see, it's that
Yeah.
type of a. It's so
Ugh,
fascinating. I mean, it's so fascinating, Cheryl. Just the crazy ideas, yeah, that we've bought into. That
goodness.
it's wrong to want money. Like, I think fundamentally, it can come down to that like basic one that so many of us have, kind of learned almost on some level anyway, that we
Yeah.
then need to make our peace with.
That right. And we're going to talk about maybe ideas to start changing that if we recognize that in ourselves. And before that, though, it was coming to mind that one of the things that really helped me kind of start down the path of changing the way I think about money, and this might have come from you, but I
Mm.
confess I don't remember, is to think about money as energy.
Mm.
And money is going where it's wanted or where it's earned or where it's deserved or whatever the right word is for the situation, but it's just energy. And so to me, that was kind of cool. And also, I also heard someone say having more money makes us more of who we are,
Yes.
not a bad person or a different, but more of who we are. So
Correct.
more of a great person, maybe, you know?
Absolutely, it is. It's a magnifier. And I think that's exactly it. It's like, let's bring it back to like reminding ourselves of what money is. It's kind of really just a genius idea, right? Like, it's the reward for service. And it makes it so much easier to live in a world where if I want to get my hair cut, but my hairdresser doesn't want mindset coaching, it's kind of like, oh, right. Well, I'm stumped because I really need my roots doing. What do you mean? Like, here, let me just coach you for an hour and in exchange do my roots, right? It's kind of, thank goodness we're not in that situation, right? Otherwise, like, yeah, maybe like we'd be going hungry because it turns out the people in the grocery store don't want mindset coaching either. It's just right. But it's like, also, thank goodness someone came up with this means of exchange. So
Yes.
we can be like,
Yes.
oh, I've got this thing that's universally acceptable. So, like, yeah, here, like, you would like this service, great. And yeah, that's really all it is. And I think sometimes it helps to just remind ourselves of that, because we are the ones, as humans, that have given it so much meaning that really it doesn't deserve to have. But you're right, it's a magnifier, and I think it's understanding that it's just going to make you more of who you already are. And so, what a
Yeah.
wonderful thing to know if you know deep down you're a good person and you can do so much more good.
Yes. Absolutely.
Mm, mm.
Absolutely. Okay. So then we've realized maybe we have some issues in our heads about this. So, how can we start to change how we think about or how we view money with those kind of deep seated beliefs?
I think the first step is awareness, right? Like, always, it's awareness. It's just being able to see where you currently are and to have a mind open enough, of course, to want to shift and change it, right? But again, if you're looking for the answer to that question, let's assume that that box is already ticked. That's like, yeah, I do want to improve that mindset on my relationship with money. So the first step for sure is awareness. And in fact, as I've just said right there, like, the first step if you want to improve your relationship with money, do you know what? One of the best ways that I know, and actually it's quite a fun kind of exercise to do in some respects, at least, to really become aware of like, well, where am I currently? What is my current relationship with money? Literally, kind of, you can be a bit playful with this, but start to think of money as if it literally was your significant other, right? So you are in a relationship with money, like we all are. So you're in a relationship with money right now. If you started to see money as your significant other, what kind of a relationship are you in with money, right? Like, do you really love love money? Or is it like, well, sometimes I love it and sometimes not so much. And well, I love you, but you're never around enough. Or like you come, but then you leave really quickly. You're never here when I want you, right? Can you see? Or like, I kind of want you and like, I kind of feel good about wanting you, but this side of you over here, like if we were talking about, I don't know, like debt or something, now I feel really bad for wanting, like that's not even allowed. Do you know what I mean? And it's just that kind of, do I need to go to counseling? Am I in a dysfunctional relationship with money here? Or like,
Yeah.
or am I avoiding it, right? Like, am I deep in avoidance? Am I not paying money any attention, right?
Mm.
Like, there's so many kind of like facets to this that if you look at it through that lens, it's really fascinating of like, oh my gosh, yeah.
That's really interesting. And it makes me realize that I have some more work to do too.
Right. But it's never ending for all of us, this work, right? We always want to be like, okay, let's stay in the work. But yeah, it's a really interesting one, that one.
Yeah.
Because it's also that if we want more, think about it, like if we want more of something, right? And I think actually this is maybe something, if I just even back up a little bit, because I think this was also a thought that really helped me when it comes to money. And it's something that Wallace D. Wattles talks about in his book, The Science of Getting Rich. And he talks about how actually like our want for more of anything, including money, is very much just a natural expression of who we are, right? Like it's that kind of like life force within us that's always for expansion and fuller expression. So how can we become the most of who we are if we are limited in any area of our life, right? Like we want to be the most healthy. Like if we want to thrive, we want to be healthy, we want to, kind of feel good. Well, having financial freedom is a part of that. Like if we're limited financially, it's going to restrict our ability to thrive in all areas.
I've had a few experiences lately where people thought I was a lot younger than I actually am. You want to know the secret? Take care of your skin. Wash your face every night. And when you do that, make sure that you're using safe and healthy products and make sure you moisturize. If you want to know my favorite skincare, it's Derm Results Advanced. I use it morning and night. Check it out at www.bit.ly/OMG Skincare and make sure you use the code ARBON10 for 10% off.
So I think it's so important to kind of like, first of all, make peace with that idea of like, of course, it's right to want more. It's just part of who I am. And then, yeah, look at that relationship. Like, okay, well, let's take a look at my relationship with money. Because if I do want more, but I'm not very welcoming, if I kind of resent money, if I feel like it's never there when I need it, etc., right? Like if that was in a dating relationship, it's like, well, I don't want to stick around her too much, right? She doesn't appreciate me. So yeah, just I think I would say like use that to just shine a bit of a light on what your current relationship's like. And that's the first step,
Yeah.
just the awareness.
Yeah. I think that will help people because these are things that are kind of hidden in there and we don't really think about it
Exactly.
necessarily. Yeah.
Exactly. And I think that's why that one's such a good tool, because there's almost like nowhere to hide, right? Like you can, and when you look at it in terms of like, oh, well, there's certain aspects of money that I'm okay with, but if there's like, oh, there's an area over here that I'm not so good with. Yeah.
Yeah. So because you brought up debt, I'm gonna skip over to that topic for just a
Mm.
minute because here in the US anyway, during this month there are some changes happening with regard to college loans and having to pay back debt, and this is something that just travels with people for 10,
Hmm.
15, 20 years sometimes, and obviously there could be debt from a home, there could be credit card debt. I know Americans are pretty well known about having bad credit card debt issues because we like to buy lots of stuff. I don't know if that's true in the UK as well.
Pretty similar, I think. Yeah, I'm sure it is. Yeah.
Yeah, we all want the stuff. So I think this idea that debt is bad
Hmm.
or just the worry about it all the
Hmm.
time hanging over our heads can become a mindset issue that creates kind of a negative money thing
Yeah.
too. So, do you have any advice about people who are dealing with that?
Yeah, absolutely. And you're so right, by the way, that if you've got that weighing on you, like if that feels like something that's heavy, and it does for a lot of people, because that's the message that we all receive, and that's the conditioning and the programming, and we don't question it. So then now, as part of this money relationship that we're in, we've got a lot of shame and judgment that we're carrying around with that. And if we're going to put labels on ourselves, okay, like, well, then we're carrying around a label of, well, I'm not very good with money because, right, like I've got debt, let's say, that can be something something that, a judgment that someone makes for themselves. And the very first step to being sort of energetically, which is at the heart of a lot of the work I do, but from an energy perspective, the very first step to put yourself in a place where you can attract more money and more prosperity to yourself is you genuinely have to start to feel that way, and feel that way now, not once you get there. And so, of course, this I think is like a big catch 22 for so many people when it comes to debt, because then they're thinking, well, how can I feel prosperous if I've got debt, etc., etc. So,
Right.
yeah, the advice that I give is, as with kind of everything, I guess, that we've been looking at so far, is it's so important to reframe that. It's so important to question some of the beliefs and assumptions you've been making about debt to this point. And so how can you look at it, okay, sort of in terms of where you are right now? And this isn't a message of saying, oh, hey, like, it's okay, just go put more money on your credit card, right? No, you want to be responsible about that, okay? Like, that's another key part of this, is being responsible with the money that you've got. But you are where you are. And I think it's so important not to judge yourself. And in fact, you can reframe it. I actually say to my clients, like, actually, how can you be grateful for the balance that's on your credit card statement? Like, you might even want
Mm.
to like stop using the word debt, because there's such a lot of like negative connotation that we just have programmed in. So it could be like, oh, I have financing on a, or I have a balance on a
Mm.
credit card statement, just in the way that I said it then. Okay. How can you feel grateful for it and recognize that that actually is still money that has supported you, right? Like, if you can see it like that, because by definition it has. That's, you've had money that you have been able to use, and really it's you're paying for that service. It's still a service that you're receiving from, let's say, your credit card provider, if we're talking about credit card debt. I mean, and also with debt, there's all different types, right? Like, very few people feel shame, judgment, or bad about a mortgage. It's kind
Right.
of like, oh, like a mortgage that's hundreds of thousands is actually completely fine. But oh my
Right.
goodness, if I've got some money over here on a credit card statement, well, shame on me, right? And
Right.
so I really think that it's so important for us as individuals. Like, this is also part of you taking ownership of your money story, your relationship with money, where what if I just change the way I felt about that? Because I'm telling you, that will clean up your energy, where you can see that, like, do you know what? Like, it supported me at that point, right? Like, or it supported me. And it might be, I mean, gosh, I've done this, right? Like, I wouldn't be here today on this episode. Cheryl, you and me wouldn't even know each other, because if it wasn't for being able to, invest in myself and put some money on my American Express card, I wouldn't have invested in coaching for myself, or invested in getting trained and being mentored by Bob Proctor, right? Like, I didn't have that money just sat in savings. And so I made a decision. Great. Like, that's something I'm so grateful for, because it enabled me to do something that was an investment in myself. So again, no shame on that. I was so grateful and happy to pay for the service of being able to do that, which is really obviously then what you're paying for in interest. So
Right.
just even breaking it down like that. And I think also recognizing that, and maybe this is moving on a bit, and it's probably might even overlap a little bit with the call that you've already done on some of the management of money, but also recognizing that you can be responsible and repaying like debt that you might have, or credit card, bills and things, at the same time as you can also be saving a little bit as well, right? And it's
Mm-hmm.
just recognizing that just because you've got debt, it doesn't stop you from being responsible with money. It doesn't stop you from saving and having different pots of money in different places. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think that for the first thing, sorry, just to kind of go back then, I think the first thing, or the most important thing, is to shift the way you feel, like release the judgment, release any shame. I just think that's got to go. That isn't serving anybody. I think it's like recognizing, do you know what? No, that was money that supported me, or even still is supporting me.
You know,
Whilst you're then working on shifting and changing, to a more overflowing state with money.
right. And when you said be grateful for that, I thought in
Mm.
my head, well, how's she going to talk me into this one?
Right.
But I get it. I
Yeah.
get it.
Well,
Yeah.
but do you see like how, and I get why your reaction was that too, because once upon a time, I would have been judging myself for that, and I wouldn't have been able to look with gratitude, right? Like, gratitude is such a powerful tool, obviously not just
Mm-hmm.
in money mindset, but actually particularly in money mindset. It's so powerful, because now you're shifting and changing your energy around money, because you cannot create a more prosperous life for yourself in any area, but particularly as it comes to money, if you're operating with an energy of kind of like scarcity and lack and And that's what's happening if somebody's like really judging themselves for the debt and feeling bad for the debt, they're really then coming from an energetic state of like, I haven't got enough, and just that this isn't good and I'm no good with money, versus actually I can totally change the way that I'm seeing that.
I think that's really going to be powerful. And even just switching the word that we use, what
Hmm.
an interesting idea, because words do have power
Oh,
and they have
completely.
meanings that we've attached to them, right? So,
Well, because
yeah.
you're right, we very rarely would go around sort of even like in relation to the homes that we own. And I know in the UK, it might be similar in America, but in the UK in particular, it's such a big culture of home ownership.
Yes.
Nobody feels bad for the mortgage, but you see, it's a different word, isn't it? We don't even use the word debt. So people aren't walking
Yes.
around going, oh my goodness, I've got 300,000 in debt. They're not saying that. It's just like, oh, I've got a mortgage.
Right.
They're
And
great, and
that's a
they're
good
grateful for the
thing.
mortgage. Exactly,
Yes.
you're grateful for that. So why can't we be? I think it's knowing, but even here, I want to be careful that I'm not sowing seeds where people are then judging themselves. I just think we've got to be sort of careful, like really see the difference between the purpose that we are using the money for, right? Like, I mean, that's where we do need to take responsibility. So again, I'm not saying just go and like spend money that you don't have, but I think there are definitely times for people where it's kind of, you know what, I'm taking a responsible decision here, and this is an investment I want to make in myself, and I'm grateful that there is such a thing as either a loan or a credit card that can allow me to do that, and I can pay it off over time. And that's what we're doing with mortgages, so why not do that in other ways to again really feel that money gets to support you.
Yes, so it's about purpose. And this is actually the other thing that I was going to ask. And so that's good that you just were mentioning this. Sometimes, if we are trying to make a change in our life, or we're trying to increase our income, or we're starting a business or whatever related to that, we have to spend some money, right? And it might
Mm-hmm.
be money, like you're saying, that we don't have right now. And
Yeah.
so that's not necessarily an easy decision to make as well. I've had people join
Mm-hmm.
my social marketing business and put their initial expenditure on a credit card. And it doesn't even have to be a lot, frankly, in that type of
Yeah.
business, but it can be a lot if it's a certification or,
Yeah.
a franchise. So I guess you're saying the purpose is a big piece of that. Why are we doing this, and what's
Mm-hmm.
the potential? And that's kind of how it will help us make that decision.
Yeah, definitely. And also, and I think this is also where you have to trust yourself as an individual too, because I think it's not just like one size fits all. Okay. And I think we do need to be very careful, gosh, especially in the world that I work in the coaching world. And one of the principles that I teach in a more general sense is this like really like act like the person you intend to become, right? Like
Mm,
act and embody that energy. And again, this can be where it gets messy when it comes to money, because so many people take that and take it very literally, that act as if means I've got to spend as if. So if that version of me is carrying a Louis Vuitton bag, well, I better go and just put that on the credit card, right? And
right.
we've got to be careful here. And this is where it's not so black and white, because if you were the type of person, okay, so this is again like almost like a caveat for your listeners here, right? But like you've got to know yourself and know yourself enough. You've got to check in with the energy with which you're doing that kind of a purchase, right? Like if you are doing it because you know that actually, yes, by doing this, I know that's going to shift like who I feel myself to be, and I can hold the energy of it. Then there are times when that could be, a kind of like an okay investment to make in yourself. But on the other hand, if you're someone that's going to do that and then you're going to worry about it, you're going to feel guilty about it, it's going to put you more into a lack energy, then you shouldn't be doing it, right? Do you see? So it's
Yeah.
kind of like
Yeah.
it's very important to check in, not only with the reason behind the decision, but also, yeah, like how are you holding the energy of that, right? Like, is it a kind of like a hell yes, or is it like a no? Do you know what? That's just going to put me more into feeling lack and scarcity. In which case, it's a no. Don't go there.
Yeah, yeah. And I guess isn't everything, but it's also related to our self image, because if I go
Mm-hmm.
out and I buy the bag or the, office space or whatever, and I don't feel like I deserve it, then
Yep.
that's going to create exactly what you're talking about, some sort
Correct.
of disconnect.
Yeah,
Yeah.
correct. And I think, yeah, for sure, you want to be careful with this. Like, don't go. I'll always say, and Cheryl, you'll know this, if you're wanting to and we're sort of going off that topic a little bit of debt now, but it kind of follows through in terms of just that like circulating money in a way that helps you to get into the energy of prosperity. You don't need to be going out and buying a Louis Vuitton bag or whatever, right? Like I'll often say, go in the grocery store and maybe you just pick up a few things. Like if you're someone that's always checking the price before you put something in, I don't know, like your basket or something, what if you just for even just a few things, decided, you know what, like I'm just going to buy the, I don't know, the ice cream that I fancy, and I'm not even going to look at the price, and that's what I'm going to do. You could do this in a restaurant, and again, especially you can pick the restaurant where you know that, okay, I'm not going to look at the
You're not going to go
prices.
crazy.
Exactly, I'm not going to look at the prices, and I'm still going to be able to pay the mortgage at the end of the month. So you know, you might not want to pick a Michelin star restaurant, you know, whatever, but just like these are little things that you can do, but they're powerful, right? Like it connects you to that prosperous energy.
I love that. And it's even as I just think about it now, I have heard you say this before, to
Mm,
do it without looking at the prices, but I had forgotten that. And even just thinking about it now, and I'm sure that the listeners are feeling this too, it feels so freeing, or something
mhm.
like that, to be able to do that. And so you're right, even if it's a small thing, there's that feeling still there.
Yeah, because we want to be coming like really from a place of if there was an unlimited supply, right? Like if the because when we're coming from an energy of like lack and limitation, that's where we're constantly like, right, I've got a budget, I don't have enough, right? And it's kind of like, how can I shift that way of thinking? How can I shift that energy? But you want to do it in a way that's not going to trigger your nervous system. So you're not, as I say, you're not then, okay, I've got to go and buy some expensive bag or shoes that like, oh my gosh, now I feel sick. No, just go and be like, okay, I'm gonna buy the tea bags that I want without looking at the price, right? Like something that you know that's kind of, yeah, this isn't gonna cause me financial hardship at the end of the month, but it's breaking the habit of always, yeah, coming from that place of lack,
Yeah.
if that makes sense.
Yeah. And you know what? I was thinking in my mind that this was such a great time to talk about money mindset, because I know that there's a lot of angst about college stuff, college
Mhm.
costs and things like that happening, especially in the US right now, plus holidays and gifts and all of this. But it also occurs to me that we are in a position right now where there's some inflation happening. And
Mhm.
so another reason to be making sure that we are not attaching this worry and negative stuff, it's that. It's if we're going
Mhm.
around all the time thinking, "Oh, I'm not going to have enough money. I'm not going to have enough money," then that's we're almost creating more of that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We really do become what we think about or who we feel ourselves to be. So we you want to be really careful, right? Because these kinds of thoughts just happen automatically, right? Like we literally, like if you're someone that you can be in the habit even of just having the thought, oh, I've got no money. Like I would encourage you, if you're someone listening to this and you ever catch yourself having that thought, right? And I'll put my hands up, like I've had that thought in the past and it's never been true, right? Like it's never been
Mm,
true. We don't even really mean it in the literal sense. You'll mean it relative to, I don't know, what's normal for you or what's in the bank account at the moment, even though you know more is coming and etc. etc. But this is where we get to shift the way that we're looking at things. This is where the awareness comes in. And so if you can catch a thought where you notice that you're thinking, oh, I don't have any money, for instance, that's kind of going to be like, well, that's not strictly true, is it? Like you will, you know, I think for most people that's kind of, no, you do have money. You may not have as much of it as you would like, but when you understand the way the mind works and the energy that we're in, yeah, we want to turn that around. We want to get out of that loop of feeling like we don't have enough. Another great tip, actually, just again to give people things that they can take away and act on, and it comes back to gratitude. But like if you can really understand that whenever you are paying for anything, and I really do mean anything, you are receiving a service, right? Like if you
mm,
can join the dots on that, like when you're paying for something, you're receiving a service. So how can you get into gratitude? Because a lot of the time, especially now, so just to come back to the point you made, Cheryl, of rising inflation, and I know in the UK media, maybe similar where you are, but in the UK media, for months and months, it's like the cost of living crisis. It's literally
mm-hmm,
like the cost of living crisis. You know, it's so again, it's like it's heightening, causing people to live in a state of fear and lack because it's bringing their attention to it. A great remedy is like, yeah, how can you get into gratitude when you're circulating money? So even when you're paying for a bill, how can you be grateful? So even if it's like the electricity bill, you know, the car tax, whatever it might be, like really acknowledge, well, I'm pretty glad that I've got electricity actually. I mean, if the fridge didn't turn on, all my food would go off and, you know, I can
mm-hmm.
heat food and I'm not going to get food poisoning because I can cook it right coming through. And like, really, we take so much for granted. So we forget when we're paying bills sometimes that we did actually receive something for the thing that we're paying for, right? This is so powerful. And again, now you start to get into the energy of like all that you have. So now you're feeling more abundant and prosperous rather than the lack and the not enoughness.
Oh my
So, yeah.
goodness. That is fantastic. And I'm going to do it too, because I definitely do not pay bills with that attitude. And so you've given us, I'm just mindful of the time,
I know I
listeners,
could talk
because
for
Karen
hours
and
on
I would
this.
talk all day and I'm going to have to cut us off. But you've given us a few things that I think are really good tips that people can try absolutely right now. And so thank you for that. Now, tell me this, how can people get in touch with you if they want to connect with you or they want to find out how to work with you? Tell us that.
Yeah, so fabulous. I guess a couple of ways. If you're on social media, the best place to find me and hook up with me over there is on Instagram. And my handle is Adventures in Awareness. And I'm sure, Cheryl, you'll put it in the show
I
notes,
will.
right? And likewise, I think apart from that, maybe just send me an email at support@KarenMullinsCoaching.com. That's another great way just to connect. So yeah, you can find me there as well.
Excellent. I will put both of those things in the show notes. Perfect. Well, you know what I'm going to ask you last, and that is the playlist. We're going to need another song that puts you in a good mood that you like to listen to kind of raise your vibration. So what will you say this time?
Okay, so this time it's an interesting one actually. This time I'm going Taylor Swift and
Okay.
Style. So I don't know if you've already got that one on the
Nope.
playlist, but that one always lifts me.
I love it. My daughter and daughter-in-law are both big Taylor Swift fans. So we do have 2 Taylor Swift songs on the playlist so far, but not that one. So
Oh,
excellent
nice.
choice. Yeah.
Perfect.
Well, Karen, thank you so much for this. I think that this is going to be really powerful. And so as a reminder, if you haven't listened to last week's episode about budgeting and making decisions with your money, Katie really went into some very practical and easy ways to get started with that. And then that and this together. And I think we're off and running with a really positive relationship with money. So I appreciate you being here.
Oh, my pleasure. Such a joy to dive into this.
Awesome. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. OMG, I would be so honored if you would take a moment, leave a rating, leave a review, or take a screenshot and share on your social media. Let's get this message out further into the world. Now it's time to head down to the show notes to see the resources I mentioned. We may not have learned this before, but it sure is powerful now.